So far, we've gone through 14 of the tiles or the plates that you need to keep spinning, and we have a few left. And I sort of grouped these into measurement or measuring. How do you measure success? And often companies aren't really sure what it is that they're shooting for, and even worse, they're not sure how to measure, especially if they're doing agile transformations or any transformation for that matter. Often it's so abstract that it becomes very challenging to know exactly what you should measure. As we get into measurement here, this is the 15th tile, and these actually look more like a plate. The one on the left is something that we had worked with Agility Health Radar. And we had developed a number of flow radars, one for the team level, one for the project program level, one for the portfolio level, in order to help organizations be able to measure where they are at in flow. These are only prototypes, and we haven't actually used them out with the customers. But based on some of the latest feedback, we'll probably be revamping these using the flow friction analysis, because that is just so powerful in measuring where a team or an individual is at. So you might be able to detect friction, for example, before it even occurs. And as I've mentioned in some of the other presentations we've done, there are only three things that happen in a company, and they happen naturally. And this is from Peter Drucker. It's friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else takes leadership. And it's really tough to measure leadership. So, in the course of one of the assignments on which we were working, we worked with a proprietary methodology called PM 4.0, Project Management 4.0. And their 7 principles were having a protected environment, having a real team, having supportive management, iterating to wow, making sure customer benefit was there, voluntary action, and then mutual tuning. By using this radar with the teams over time, you can see if the teams are improving or if they're slipping backwards in any of the areas. So in this particular example, and this is only for example only, the numbers have been changed to protect the innocent or the guilty. You can see that in this case, the team was feeling like, hey, our environment is not protected, we're getting pulled away by the executives, and there's all kinds of things that are pulling us 6 different directions at once, and the team, the intrinsic motivators under voluntary action, you could see that they were starting to slip. This was a 1 through 7 scale, and we felt that anything above 5 was you're still in the okay comfort zone. But if anything went below 5, we would immediately start to react. And so in this example, we would say, oh, okay, we need to look at this and find out why the team is saying, hey, our protected environment is worse than it was before. And then we also might want to start to dig into and look at voluntary action. Even though it's above 5, we would be looking at that and trying to figure out, okay, what is it that we need to do? Why is that slipping? Is this trend going to continue? But in the other areas, they either were stable or they were getting much better. So iterating to wow, the team was happy. They were happy with their supportive management. So when they were actually working, they felt that they got the right support from their leadership. It's just that they were getting pulled every which direction by the organization. So those are two different things. Here in this picture, you can use various radars and health checks to measure the team. So what I just described on the last slide, that was actually a health check for the team. And then you can also have health checks for the project program product level if you want. And you can also have radars for the portfolio leadership. And this starts to get really important if a team of executives are saying, hey, we want to reinvent ourselves. Well, guys, you better have a really good definition of what that means and what that looks like. You need to distill agreement in order to eliminate the politics and or risk of groupthink. And after that, you can start to deliver. And part of driving is being able to measure these things. And it's very difficult to measure these things. And most individuals, teams, organizations underestimate how much work it is to actually figure out what are the right things to measure, because you don't want to end up with proxy variables. Okay, proxy variables might help you a little bit, but they may deceive you and they may send you off the wrong direction if the trend lines end up being incorrect, and there's any half a dozen reasons that that could happen. The 16th tile uses the AHA curve, and we're showing how we've actually used it to measure. This is a real-world example of a team that we were doing a workshop with them, and the dots on each of these were the dots that they voted. It was the team's actual self-assessment, how they felt that they were doing as an individual. 11 of the individual team members scored that they were going through the motions. They felt like they were doing zombie agile. A couple of them said that, hey, we're struggling. A couple of them said that, hey, we feel like we're actually performing. And one person felt that they had achieved a high level of performance, which was met with some chuckles and laughter from the actual team. And so we captured that on the individual slide. What we did then was we scored all that, and the average score was 2 point something. Don't remember what it is right now, but it was 2 something. And so we put the dot firmly over the team is just going through the motions. And then the product owner, he scored where he felt the product part of the program was going, and he put it at about a 1.5. And then we, as the consultants, we scored the organization, and we felt that they were somewhere in between struggling and going through the motions for the group of projects on which we were working, okay, or the other teams that were actually helping out as well. So over time, again, over time you start to get a trend line, and you should start to see movement of those bubbles up the AHA curve. And so this gives the program level upwards to the executives a way to quickly assess, okay, how is the team doing? How are they moving forward? Where are they at in their progress? And this one here could also be used, for example, there on a couple slides ago at the measuring success slide, it mentioned that an organization was talking about, hey, we need to reinvent our leadership. I mean, that's a common buzzword out there. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? Nobody knows. But if they were able to define what that looked like, they could then take the AHA curve, take those executives, do a self-assessment, and start to see where they were at going up the curve. And over time, if they were really bold and secure in themselves, they could ask their direct reports to also rate them where they think that each of the executives are in their journey to reinventing themselves. So there's more than one way to use these particular measures. These are just a couple ways that we've looked at here in the last half year. Now, the following slides are from real world in the fires of projects and programs and portfolios. And executives typically prefer seeing burn-up charts because they don't like seeing things that are going downward, because then that's like, ooh, we're losing money. But if it's going upwards, oh boy, we're making progress. And for the team and sprint level, it should be pointed out that you need 4 to 6 successful sprints before you can even begin to begin to be able to do any kind of projections. And again, if the points are a proxy variable, and that will happen if your teams are not persistent, dedicated, full-time teams, at that point, points are pointless. But you can use them as a relative measure and sort of help the team keep moving a certain direction. We would rather see them achieve the sprint goal than to put too much focus or emphasis on points. So this is the 17th and final tile of, hey, how do we measure this? How can we tie this into governance in order to see how our scaling efforts, how our transformation efforts, how our rollout efforts are adding value to the organization. Now, just a note here, down in the lower left corner, team burn-up charts, or burn down if you use those. I don't really like them. I prefer burn-up as well. They're only for the team. It's not for the managers. We have enough other reports for the managers that they don't need to be putting their noses into that. These reports at the team level are there to help the team improve. Okay? It's not there so that the managers can ask the typical question, "Who do I kick?" It's like, no, that's not what's supposed to happen here. The teams together they succeed, and together they fall, and all for one and one for all, that type of thing. Just make sure that if the managers are reading those burn-up charts for the sprint level, for each sprint, that they're well trained, that they understand what they mean, they understand what they're used for, and that they understand clearly that it's not for them. But they can look. As a stakeholder, they can still look. So it's nothing that we keep secret. Now, where it gets interesting is at the project and program level, up in the program or product program corner. And there, the top graph is when we're tracking a project sprint by sprint, and we have a pretty good idea of the total size of the backlog. But you'll notice that the backlog sort of changed size, and then they put in some things, they took out some things, and then it sort of evened out. And you could see that this project was going to take the better part of a year from where the lines cross. Now, some of the software programs, they do 3-point estimates. Actually, you don't need to do 3-point estimates, because as the lines move up or down, they move up or down very slightly. And so doing 3-point estimates are just extra overhead that I'm not sure really add any value to what you're doing. Especially when you're doing project program and portfolio level reporting. For the programs that are in the portfolio, you could see how the projects were being completed and how this particular program almost doubled the number of projects in it. And you can see that the teams working on that program we're having a dramatic acceleration there right around summertime, just a little bit after, with their velocity of completing the projects, because at the program level we would just track the products or projects completed. And so even though with that dramatic uptake, you could see that halfway through the year we were like going, well, it might be a little bit of a stretch for them to actually hit that program target and goal that was reset just about 4 months into the year. And the team actually, it almost became like an S-curve, and they came right in and delivered right on target. So it ended up being extremely accurate. And so that's an example of how that line will move up and down. If the line is moving upwards, it's just like a speedometer, and you know that you're accelerating. And so by fall for that program, we were able to show, yeah, we're going to make it. When you get into the portfolio level, you're aggregating all the projects and programs into a single curve. And on this one, I was showing the the actual amount for, it looks like 2012. Yep, that's what it is. And so the green was what we achieved in 2011, and we're trying to see on the portfolio, are we going to hit it for 2012? At this point, it looked like they were going to hit a little over 100, but in reality, they hit 98. But hey, they went from 72 the year before to 98 the following year, or something like, or 78 it looks like almost. But whatever, you can see that there was a substantial jump in the team's abilities to move forward. And we actually have this one on the next slide, so you can see it a little bit better.